2 or 3 times during the year that I helped out that way, and I was real proud and honored. In 1935, I graduated from Robert E. Lee, and then very shortly thereafter, I went to work for Humble Oil and Refining Company. And I, too, thought that was forever. I stayed 45 years. And in the fall of 35, I started to Lee College. I couldn't take a full load because I needed to work some during the day, and took 3 classes. And here again, this is another, believe it or not, that same guy that taught me English in high school, I went to school to him at Lee College at night. And he knew, and he told me so. Sam, you're not going to make an A. You're a B student. And that's what I got. I don't know if he ever graded any of my papers in college or not, but anyhow, that's the way it went. I wasn't really interested in that class as much, and he knew that because I could hear that basketball bouncing because I wanted to play basketball. Well, Doll Cole was one of those fellows that had coached at Robert E. Lee and didn't win all the games like some of the other coaches in the world, and they got rid of him. We inherited him over to college to do PT or whatever. I don't know what Mr. Rundell told him. Anyhow, he became our basketball coach. And we organized a basketball team, just had about 7 of us, I think, and we called them the Lee College Blue Devils. We play anywhere, anytime, just line up and get a referee. Well, it didn't take long for us to get to be known around the country because we were pretty good, and we had a good time. We weren't taking enough hours now. We weren't taking enough hours to be a credited team. We were just, they'd say today you're an outlaw team. But we were not fully credited to play in a junior college conference. Well, this lasted a couple of years, playing and having fun like this because we didn't have any salary. We didn't have an agent to help us handle that $1 million like they do and all that now. We even bought our own shoes. Mr. Rundell didn't have any budget to buy shoes, so we bought our own shoes. Listen to this, $3.50 a pair. Well, if you don't have but a quarter, that's a lot of money. But anyhow, we got the shoes and we got to play it. Well, people were kind of amazed at us because we played to win. And win however you can, but win. And we won a lot. And people got acquainted with the Lee College Blue Devils. And I don't think we ever heard Lee College's name, but we were a winner. Then when we got through with that, we stayed over at Humble and played with Humble Oilers. Well, we had a good time there too, because we believed in having fun. And we had a good time. The college kept growing. Mr. Rundell's given you some things about the college in World War II, and Rundell Hall was built, and the social science building. 1960, the library and the gym. I think I have some of these dates right. 1966, the technical vocational building, and in 1968, Moeller Hall and the humanities building, the cafeteria additions. These are the way some of the buildings come in years. One thing that Mr. Rundell didn't tell you, he and this fellow Muller, the one that's sitting over here tonight, they got together and found out that there were some people in Baytown that didn't know how to fix a gasoline engine or wire up a switch and all of those other little things, and they wanted to have a vocational classes in Lee College to teach people how to do things that they didn't know about using their hands. And they did that. And Mr. Muller there and Mr. Rundell are responsible for the vocational technical and Lee College. It's branched out over much of the country, and then it went to prison too. There was a great deal of talk about the separation and some unkind words that are buried over there on the Hill of Rest, and they're pretty heated. Not going to go into them, but he's already told you when the vote was taken and we got separated from the public school system, and he didn't tell you the reason of it, but I'll tell you the reason. Some people got mad and want to separate from it. when you have a long list. How many of you have been at a school board meeting? Most of you have. You go to a school board meeting, they've got an agenda that long. Well, right down here below the last item was the Lee College agenda, and they never got through. And they were tired and mad when they did get through, and poor old Lee College got nothing. I'm telling you the truth. And so a lot of people were unhappy. And besides that, we didn't want to. So when I say we, you remember, I'm a faculty member from back there when Mr. Smith got me lined up. We didn't want them doing things like they did because they were not progressive enough for the junior college. So we parted ways with them. And here, they got some foul up with Mr. Elliott over there at the county seat.
He just couldn't count.
Sir?
He just couldn't count.
Well, I knew he couldn't count, but he got elected. Anyhow, they thought that they were going to stop us from organizing and declaring this thing separated, but anyhow, they let us go ahead with it. That, about 2 weeks later, they appointed 9 regents. The public school board did. And in case you haven't seen or don't know these, I'd like to just name them for you alphabetically. J.M. Black, O.R.E. Boatwright, Sam Bramlett, Royal D. Burnside, L.J. Marsh, Alma McNulty, Warren Spivey, W.J. Strickler, and John Sylvester. We met for quite a little bit over there in the library up in the second floor, and this was kind of isolated. We didn't have many people come to the meeting because they couldn't find us. But anyhow, we did that, and let me tell you folks, you have no idea what a load that public school people put on these 9 people. I'm serious now, because we certainly hadn't had any practice. Here again, I think we had determination. We had guts that we could do some right things, and we went to work. And we had a lot of meetings, and we got a few things started. In September 1966, Dr. Strahan came to be the first full-time, no other obligation president that Lee College had. He stayed with us 5 years. Also in the fall of 66, we named the Rundell, the building over there, Rundell Hall, added a little dignity to it. The only thing I'm sorry about it, what we did was that picture over there. I don't know whether he was going to pay for one being printed, painted, or how, but that's a very small picture for the dignity that that man is supposed to show, and that building is supposed to honor him. It's too small. If I had a brush, I'd paint a good one, Walter. You talk about some of these faculty members, whether you know it or not or will agree with me, that's immaterial. Old Mr. Bonner was the first computer that Lee College ever had. That man knew more about ways to teach people math and to do things and tricks. And the real thing about it, he enjoyed every bit of it. Always. Any of you ever hear him grumble? No, you didn't ever hear him grumble. Boy, he was a good one. Another thing we did pretty soon was that we didn't much like that meeting room. We got busy, looked around what we might do, some of the board members and Dr. Strahan. Well, we looked down at Galveston, we knew about the Moody's and the cotton, bales of cotton and things down there, so we said, well, you can't go wrong by asking. So we asked Ms. Moody Northern, that just died here recently, we asked her for some money to refurbish Rundell Hall on the west side and upstairs for a boardroom and some administrative offices. Well, we didn't hear for a while, but finally she came through. And when we had the open house, she was there. And happy as she could be, because she had seen some of her dollars go into cement and things of that kind. And we always will appreciate that lady for that. Now, money was real tight. Mr. Rundell talked about this budget and things like that, but money was tight and it was hard to come by. I took a lot of ribbon because I was on the board and all the utility lines owned stanchions over there. I want you to know that wasn't our first choice. We didn't have the money to go underground and do the right thing because we're trying to buy some other things. So money was tight and bad to try to get it anywhere, especially from the school board. And we hadn't built up our tax base yet in order to do something better. And then another mistake that I take a lot of blame for, and we built too many one-story buildings. But here again, we didn't have the money to go up to 2 and 3 stories. We had to stop at 1 and make metallic buildings out of them. This is not good. But of course, you know, 30 years experience does a lot more for you than some other things. And when it come time to buy the computer, when they said the price of that computer that night, I thought I'd die. That much money for that box of hardware. Well, they said, we need it if we're going to keep up with society. Well, they didn't know how much truth they were saying because that is what we needed. And they've changed 2 or 3 times since then. Bigger and better and bigger and cost more and cost more. That's always it. There's not a one of them that's ever gone down. None. But anyhow, we struggled, and I think we did well with what we had. Another thing we did was to talk about the Lee College Foundation. One way that we could get some money to help some students go to school. So we organized a foundation and we had some success, but somewhere along the line we had a drop-off period and it didn't work and wasn't active for a while, but now that it's picked up and it's going strong, and if you want to do a good thing, you can help the Lee College Foundation. Another thing that we planned, and I'm sure that Mr. Rundell had still been there, he would have been in favor of this. Excuse me. We had a number of people that had an upper level degree, but not enough. This is some thinking that was done with our planning staff and people, that we needed some more people with an upper level degree, a master's and a doctorate. And we devised a way and a policy whereby some of these folks that we had, and we would let them take off a year. The college will pay so much of their tuition and keep them whole for that school year. I don't know how many we did that away, but I think some of them are in this room, and some of them are still teaching over there, that helped them get a baccalaureate degree better than what they had when they came here. And I think this was a good step. Out on North Main, this is another one. We found out that there was going to be a piece of land out there for sale. We didn't have any money, but we put it in the bond issue, and we got $200,000 to buy some land on North Main, because it was our vision, because of Interstate 10, that there would be some growth, population growth to that area, but the population growth has never come to Baytown like we were anticipating, especially not in the young folks, the children, to go to school, because we still can take care of what students we have in Baytown over at the Lee College property like it is. Mrs. Maud Moeller had 6.5 acres over there, and we needed that piece of land to square up the plot that we had, and we asked her for it. So she's responsible for some of the gifts to Lee College. She was a gracious lady and wanted to do something to help other people. And this is what she did, because we asked her if she mind, or could she, or would she, and she did. Well, let me tell you, my part in whatever Lee College has been, or whatever, which has been a long time, since about 1934, in some form or other, and that's That's a long time. And let me tell you another thing. I've never gotten paid for this outside of that $6 class that Mr. Smith did. I've never been paid. I'm the only regent of the group. Got an administrator and two other students besides me. But you know what? There's a little trick here, and I don't say this boastfully. Don't take that. It was my duty to sign or have signed every one of them's paycheck at one time or another. And I couldn't tell you what they make or nothing. I didn't worry about that part. I just signed where they told me to. And I think that's a real privilege, the three of you. One other thing, and I wish you would listen to me real close, and don't sell us short. Can you count the jobs that's been at Lee College, you working for Lee College, you people, other people, and the staff, the administrators, and people like that? A long time. Lots of people have been through and had a job because of Lee College. Now, to me, that's something. We have contributed something to this community when we have the number of faculty people, number of students, and everybody, as we have out there, you have a living. Okay, the administrators, and like I said before, they're not going to leave. They're here, and they're not going to leave. Well, you never seen a barefooted boy leave a dish of ice cream? They're not going to leave. How many of people, this blonde-headed woman here has encouraged to go to college and told them what class to take and helped them with the counseling? If they call her at night, she'll tell them, take this, Johnny, and Mary Sue, you need to do this, and on and on and on. There's no end to how far this woman's influence will go. Just keep that in mind. How many folks have been encouraged? Then I want to say another thing. This Sue Jones picked up the ball and went just a little bit farther and called it continuing education. Well, that's people that had either been in school or out of school or needed some more learning or something, but she'd pick up and give them continuing education. Sue doesn't have any idea how many people her teachers and her folks and over there touched that have come through for Lee College. The vocational technical side of it, there is no way, and even Mr. Bonner couldn't tell us this, how many people from the refinery and Shell and the other people over Port Arthur, other places that come through here to have some kind of training course, welding, pipe fitting, instrumentation, electrical, form builders. We had it all here to help these people learn how to make more money on their job. And you did that here in this community, or you did this as a faculty member. How many times, or do anybody know, ever hear Ms. Yates say anything about how many little women had come to her at home? This lady may have had 2 children. She had lost her husband by transportation. He run off and left her. And she become the one to make the living. And she come to Miss Teter, I need a job. I can type a little. I can file. Would you help me? How many times has that lady taken a person like that in her car and gone to places and begged people, say, give me a job for this woman, she's good? Now, I'm not telling you anything. This is the truth. This is the truth. Well, how about the ex-students? We don't know how many they have of them. There have been some disagreements, and I'm not proud of some of them. But somebody, like the old boy says, you've come to bat now, what are you going to do? And you come to bat, you've got to do something. Falls on your shoulders, you're nobody you can ladle that ball off to or anything like that. You have to stand pat. Take the shot. Well, all I'm asking you people to do is to tell somebody else about Lee College, Don't stop doing what you're doing. Just keep on doing, keep on helping, keep on going. We're going to be better. We're going to be better. Now, if you don't believe that, how about trying it? Just see if you can or cannot be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sam. I think Sam just introduced my next two speakers. I'll ask Gertrude Teter to come talk to us.
When I talk about Lee College, my family kiddingly tell me they need to get out the violins, but it may sound like hearts and flowers, but I really mean what I say. My formal association with Lee College began when I was 16 years old. When I entered Lee College as a freshman, my older brother was a junior at Rice, and I had two younger siblings. At that time, even though Rice didn't charge any tuition, it was a financial hardship on my family to have even one in college, much less two. But I was fortunate when I entered Lee College to get an NYA job as a student assistant in the registrar's office. And I hadn't been working very long when there was a cut in the NYA program, and Mr. Rundell called each one of us in and asked if we could still afford to go to school without a job. And I said I could, although I really probably couldn't, but being honest paid off because they were able to find a few jobs that the school could pay for. So I was able to start working 5 extra hours a week. When I was a freshman at Lee College, and there's someone here who also was a freshman there, so John, if I say anything wrong, you correct me. Most of the students were from Baytown, Goose Creek, and Pelly. There were 3 girls in my freshman class who were from out of town, and 2 of them stayed with relatives. The third one was from Crosby, but she didn't live in Crosby. She roomed and board with a teacher in Baytown, and she'd go home to Crosby for the weekend. I thought since we were given a little leeway in what we could talk about, I could point out some of the contrasts from when I was a student and during the various years I taught different things at Lee College. When I attended Lee College, it was in Robert E. Lee High School. And the classes, in my freshman year, there were a few morning classes, not many. By the time I was a sophomore, though, most of the classes were in the evening because that's when there was more space available. And I don't know now how I was stupid enough to write a theme in Mr. Rundell's English class as a freshman about how I thought Lee College was so much like high school. And it was for the reason he said. We were in the high school building. That's where I'd gone to high school. And we had some of the same teachers. One other thing, John, looking at you reminds me, and this is another contrast in the times. One of the girls in my freshman class had moved here with her family from Steubenville, Ohio, and we nicknamed her Yankee, and that was an endearing term because the only person further north, Baytown, well, not the farthest north, was someone from Palestine, Texas, and it was an endearing term. And when I see her now and we meet people, my husband said, be sure not to introduce her as Yankee because people just wouldn't understand. But back then, it was an endearing term. Isn't that right? In 1941-42, the student body consisted primarily of high school graduates. However, the years immediately following that, we had somewhat older students returning to school. These were the war years, and it was pretty serious business. There were a number of, when I say older, I mean older than 18, people coming back to school. Many of them were the wives of servicemen, and they were coming to take business courses, shorthand, typing, office machines. And Mr. Rundell must have really been hard up for a teacher. I guess most of the people who could teach those courses had lucrative jobs in industry. So he hired me when I was a sophomore to teach 2 classes in typing. And I guess maybe I did some counseling at that time without even knowing it, because many of the wives of the servicemen worked during the day and then took typing at night, and they were sort of tired, you know, and they'd talk, and I'd listen. Maybe that's how I went into my profession. I'm not sure. I want to give you just a couple of statistics, and I heard Mr. Rundell's, and ours don't agree exactly on the 41, 42, but I told him I think mine probably came from the beginning of the semester because they were from the registrar's report, and yours probably came from the end. But in 1941-42, there were 146 men and 143 women. In 42-43, 73 men and 142 women. Of course, many of the men had entered service at that point, or they had gone to work in industries that paid so well. And two of my female classmates joined the Curtis Wright cadets. They were real sharp in math and science, and their test scores were very good, so they left us. Then there was an advertisement by General Tire and Rubber, and they were interested in hiring people who had completed a year of college chemistry. Well, two of my girlfriends and I decided that we weren't very patriotic to stay in school. So one rainy Saturday morning, we went out to General Tire and Rubber and talked to Roy Elms. A few days later, I get this letter in the mail. I had envisioned myself, you know, as an outstanding chemist. I should have realized better back in those days. The job offer I got was for a lab stenographer. And of course, my ego was crushed, and Mr. Rundell told me he thought I'd be doing more for the war effort if I just stayed in school and got my degree. During the years that I was at Lee College, there was an extremely high percentage of self-supporting students. In 42-43, there were 66.7% of the males and 45.5% of the females who were self-supporting. In 43-44, the percentages were 75% for males and 57% for females. And it was tempting to quit school and go to work because the money really was good. Another contrast to previous years was the decrease in the percentage of entering freshmen who graduated from Lee College. In 41-42, it's 19.8%, 42-43, 9.8, 43-44, 5.26. In my sophomore year, I was president of the student body, but it really wasn't such a great honor. Remember, there were twice as many women as men in school, and they probably voted for me because I was a woman. One thing I remember, it was when I was a freshman, because I was secretary of the student council, and we were pretty active then, and I was elected by the other student council members to be one of the delegates to a convention in San Antonio. I think the reason they elected me instead of the other two girls, because two of the girls' boyfriends were going to get to go, and they trusted me because when I was 16, I didn't find boys as inspiring as I did books. And on that train to San Antonio, the train left about 11:30 or 12 midnight, and then we arrived in San Antonio in the morning. I was the only female in the whole coach. And I don't know if these names sound familiar to you, but Jack Valini was there, Welcome Wilson, Johnny Goen, and Sherwood Crane. They were from the University of Houston. And the males were either student council members or servicemen. And unfortunately, I was painfully shy at the age of 16 and didn't understand what a lucky girl I was at that time. At Lee College, I was fortunate to have some excellent teachers. When Mr. Rundell compared me to Lynn O'Hagan and Charles Bonner, that was really quite a compliment. I don't know how many of you were fortunate enough to know them. You've heard a lot about Mr. Bonner, but nothing like what I'm going to tell you. I put off taking math until the very last. So when students come to me with math anxiety, I can understand so well, but I don't tell them, you know. I really looked for a degree that didn't require any math, but I couldn't find any. So I took algebra and trig from Mr. Bonner, and Mr. Bonner was able to teach me trigonometry when I had never had geometry. And I think that's an amazing feat. And he would, feat, rather. I was thinking of my fate, I guess, a Freudian slip. He would say, for the benefit of those of you who haven't had plain geometry, and he'd go back and explain these theorems so the other students in the class loved my being in there because they didn't remember, they had it, but they didn't remember all that. And of course, for those of you who knew Lynn O'Hagan, I've never known a more versatile teacher. She taught English, drama, French, speech, you name it, Lynn O'Hagan taught it. And of course, Mr. Rundell. I'm not going to tell you all the subjects he taught me. He did teach me English. A few months before I graduated from the University of Texas, I received a letter from Emory Anderson, who was then dean at Lee College, and he offered me the job of registrar. At that time, the registrar wasn't considered a full-time position. You had to teach 2 courses in addition to being registrar to be full-time. So I thought about the job a while, and then I decided with a major in psychology, I better take it because I majored in psychology without really knowing what I was going to do with it, but don't tell students I work with that I did that. I still think you need to major in what you're really interested in, though. We spent about the last few weeks before I graduated trying to make me look older because in those days I was petite horizontally as well as vertically, and I looked younger than 20 years old. When I got to Lee College, I was supposed to teach shorthand and typing. That was on the schedule. My major was psychology. I ended up teaching freshman English, and you can't imagine how I felt that whole year. I had only 12 semester hours of English, 6 from Dean Rundell and 6 from Lynn O'Hagan. Every day I tried to resign because I didn't feel qualified to teach it. The only part of the course that I felt secure with was the part dealing with planning your future. There was a book in the course called The Road Ahead, and that part I felt comfortable with, but I thought I couldn't just teach that because these students really need to learn English. I didn't know whether they were going to do it from me, but I was going to try. And we had a record enrollment that year. Many of the students were veterans, people that had been in school with me and ahead of me. Thank goodness they didn't call me by my first name because I would have just been shattered and wouldn't have known what to do. You can imagine how much work I had. Well, Mr. Rundell and I were the administration, and besides that, I had 2 classes to teach in English. The time I spent at school was spent on registrar's work. So on my own time, I had to do class preparation and grade my papers. If my students learned 1/10 of what I learned that year, they would have learned an awful lot. After 2 years at Lee College, I left. It wasn't from overwork, but I had graduated from the university at 20 years of age. And after 2 years, I ran out of excuses. People in Baytown were trying to marry me off, and I was a women's libber back when it wasn't stylish. I wasn't ready to accept the responsibilities of marriage and what it entails. So I left Baytown, moved to Houston, and stayed there a while and got married. And then some people really thought I was a failure when I came home from the University of Texas because I hadn't found a husband. I hadn't learned to drink, smoke, or play bridge. Of course, since then, I found a husband and learned to play bridge. Off and on, I did some part-time teaching at Lee College, and then in 1960, went back to work full-time. You can understand why Lee College doesn't know when to give me a service pin. I've asked for my